let me introduce myself. I am Mahesh Bhatt, and I am the Chief Business Officer for TeamLease Services. As part of our celebration of 20 years of TeamLease, we are conducting talk shows with eminent people and industry stalwarts. As part of this leadership talk series, today's topic is: will privatization and globalization lead to technological advancement in workforce management? So, as our guest today on the talk show is Mr. Ambrose. He's a senior HR professional with 25 years of experience in HR function in diverse businesses. Currently, he is the Chief HR Officer of Rasi Seeds, one of India's leading biotechnology and agri-business corporations. Mr. Ambrose has significant experience in employee relations, hiring and talent management, performance management, learning and development, engagement and rewards, CSR and administration, and legal and other HR functions. He is a pioneer in driving HR technology to facilitate business growth. A warm welcome, Mr. Ambrose.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bhatt, for the elaborate introduction.
Right for us to have you on this talk show. So, I would like to begin with some introduction to the topic today. The role of technology is amplified in agriculture and evolved with automation needs. Agriculture reforms towards privatization and globalization give acceleration to farmer growth and technological advancement in workforce management. New technologies in agriculture, such as hybrid seeds production and horticulture, gives new opportunities to the workforce. The future of agriculture will provide numerous benefits, including new job opportunities with the evolution of technology in agriculture. So, Mr. Ambrose, I would start with my first question, with your permission. As a player in the agriculture sector, what are the changes you are observing in the sector post-COVID, and do these changes lead to better ways of workforce management, and how companies are affected by these changes?
Dr. Bhatt, thank you so much for the introduction, and let me also thank you and also thank TeamLease for having me on this discussion. I think you brought about a couple of major issues have been brought out in your introductory comments. One of them is the impact of privatization and globalization on technological advancement here. And given the fact that I currently represent an agribusiness company, let me try to talk about the influence that privatization and globalization have had on agribusiness in India. We'll also try to touch upon technological advancements. Of course, I'm not. My experience has been in HR in various industries, including primarily in steel for a long time, as well as other diverse businesses. But having been in the agribusiness industry for the past 9 to 10 months, and also having had a background in education in agriculture, that was 27 years ago, it's quite interesting to be back in the agribusiness field and to observe at close range the way the agribusiness sector has developed, as well as the kind of industry competition that has developed in India, and how the entry of the private sector into agribusiness has, in a way, revolutionized the agribusiness scenario in India. Now, you talked about COVID and the impact that COVID had on industry and agribusiness in particular. I think, needless to say, COVID had an impact on every sector. I think every sector, no sector was spared. I think everybody felt the impact of COVID. And if you look back at, I think it was March 2020, if I'm right, when the first lockdowns were announced and the curfews were announced, I think none of us had a clue as to what the future held for us and what was going to happen. Now, I think the immediate reaction once lockdowns were announced was that everything came to a standstill. Transport came to a standstill, industry came to a standstill, commerce came to a standstill. So practically everybody was impacted. I think only as the government, the think tank, when people started understanding the impact that lockdowns were having on the economy, and they started rationalizing about what could be done, what could not be done. That was when the government, with the best of intentions, of course, started relaxing the lockdown norms for certain industries, agriculture in particular, essential industries, essential commodities, continuous process industries. So these were a few sectors which were slowly, things were relaxed, and industries were allowed to operate. So these were global instructions that agribusiness should not be affected in any way. Continuous process industry should not be affected. And I was in a continuous process industry at that time. So while the announcements were made, how effectively did these announcements percolate down to the district administrations and to the constable on the street? So while there were a lot of relaxation for agriculture and various other sectors of industry, I think the constable on the street did not have clear instructions as to what he needed to do, what he was not supposed to do. Then therefore there were restrictions. So we did face a lot of issues in terms of movement of commodities, movement of input commodities, movement of finished products back to the market, and all of that. And agriculture, you will understand, is a sector in which time is of the essence. So each step of a cycle of farming has to meet particular very tight timelines.
Absolutely.
Everything has to happen at a particular time. Sowing has to happen at a particular time. Certain agronomic practices have to be delivered at a particular point of time. Harvesting has to be done at a particular point of time, and the finished produce has to reach the consumer at a particular point of time. Therefore, I think the biggest impact that COVID had on agriculture, even though it was not as pronounced as it was with other industries, was the movement of essential inputs on time. So there were areas where seeds did not reach the farmers on time, possibly plant nutrients, plant protectants did not reach the consumers on time, the farmers on time. And similarly, the timely movement of finished product. Of course, things like food grains and cash crops have a shelf life. Therefore, a certain delay in delivery doesn't really matter, because you can build up stocks and then deliver them to the consumers at a later stage. But perishable commodities like fruits and vegetables took a big hit, because unless they reach the shelves on time and unless they reach the consumer's table on time, they have a very limited time span and then they perish. And therefore, because of all these issues, a lot of farmers who were involved in the cultivation of fruits and vegetables actually had to let the crop perish on the field itself. So that this is where there was an impact on COVID to the in the agribusiness sector. And I think I should say, like any other industry, like any other profession, it was the small players who really felt the impact. And therefore, the small players, the small farmers were impacted the most. So COVID, you can say that the COVID left a trail of destruction in its wake. There were small retailers, there were kirana shops, small restaurants, small businesses. So many small businesses went out of business altogether. They were wiped out. And in a similar way, I think the impact of COVID was felt most by the small farmers. And how have things changed post-COVID is a matter of another discussion. I don't think things have changed dramatically, because agriculture is a business which operates in quite the same way, irrespective of bad monsoons, So COVID was one of those things which happened in a particular year, and things have, to a very large extent, come back to normal. If I were to, I've been reading about how things have changed post-COVID, and while I don't see any dramatic changes in the way the industry operates, a couple of things which are picking up steam in the post-COVID scenario. One is how do small farmers manage their business, right? And I think in India, most of the farmers are small farmers, and some 85% or so of farmers in India actually cultivate lands which are much smaller than 2 hectares, which is considered a kind of, at least a minimal area of land to economically cultivate. And therefore, these small farmers who constitute the majority of farmers in India, they lack access to irrigation, for example. They lack access to finance. The exposure to technical know-how is limited. The exposure to new technologies is limited, and the bargaining power in the markets would also be limited. So these are the problems that small farmers in India face. And given these constraints, they will always be at a risk. And another severe wave of COVID, could actually deeply impact a large number of these small farmers. So I think from what I've been reading in industry, I think one of the trends that has been picking up, at least in certain states, is group farming. How do people come together, pool their resources, pool their lands together, and they can voluntarily pool land, they could pool labor, they could pool capital. You can cultivate in groups so as to enjoy the benefits of economies of scale. So I think that is a trend which some states, I understand, particularly in the south, in Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh, some parts of Tamil Nadu, it is picking up. But then at the same time, this is India, and you have various other issues. You have social issues, you have political issues, and you have so many other issues. And therefore, bringing people together is always a problem. I think India will always be a country divided, whether we like it or not. And even though the economic reasons may actually work in favor of getting people together, but then the social pulls and pushes keep people apart. So I don't know if it will catch up as a trend all over India, but I understand that in certain parts of the country it is actually working. Another thing that I've seen picking up over the last couple of years is the emergence of Pharma producer organizations, which essentially primarily aim to eliminate middlemen. So you build a community of farmers, often facilitated by an NGO which has an expertise in building FPOs. And then once the hand-holding stage is over a period of 2 to 3 years, the FPO becomes independent. They appoint their own CEO, and they set up their own marketing network. And essentially, it's all about joint bulk procurement of inputs and joint marketing of the output directly to the consumer, which to a very large extent would eliminate the middlemen. So I think if you look at these two developments, I think a common thing that runs to both of them is the spirit of cooperation. And I think if farmers of India can in some way organize themselves into small cooperatives in which they can work by jointly pooling in their land and resources, and also putting their intellectual capital together and work on jointly procuring inputs and jointly selling the output directly to the consumer, it will be a great development in the agribusiness field. So I think to answer your question, these are two developments I notice over the past couple of years post-COVID to be picking up in the country. And I think if it works out well, it would be in the best interests of the farmers as well as the consumers.
Yeah, they say that necessity is mother of all inventions.
Absolutely.
So I think the pandemic might have actually helped in making this, helping these factors, right?
Absolutely. I think it's been a kind of wake-up call for everybody, for us in our personal lives, for industry, for businesses, for commerce. And we learned new ways of doing things. And I think the agribusiness sector is no exception. We've been compelled to think of new ways of doing things, and something I'm confident something good will come out of this.
Okay. So my next question is on what is the workforce strategy emerging nowadays? How technology and the emerged workforce models will support and evolve this farming practice for better utilization of resources?
Sure. See, As far as the agribusiness sector is concerned, I don't see any dramatic change in the workforce strategies as such. I think things will continue as they are. But I think the problem that all of us will face, irrespective of the industry we represent, is going to be a shortage of labor. That's going to be a big issue across industry. I think we've started feeling this pinch over the last couple of years, and I believe going forward, this will be a major pressure point that all industries will face. And I suppose agriculture would face it a little more than the others. If you see the trend of migration of labor, you will see a movement from agriculture to industry, because the youth of today feels, that is where the bigger incomes are, that is where the better prospects are. You will see a migration from rural India to urban India, which we're already seeing. And we will see a migration from, as aspirations rise, we will see a migration from blue-collar jobs to white-collar jobs. As people get educated, people acquire their degrees. So people, feel that they should move into a more prestigious, socially prestigious profession. So all these migrations are going to happen, from rural to urban, from agriculture to industry, from blue collar to white collar. So all of this is going to happen. And I think as it happens, all industries will be under pressure for want of labor. And I think agribusiness will be no exception. I think we will be the first hit, because people will tend to move more into industry than into agriculture. And we will be, again, we should look at it as an opportunity to think about what we can do better. How do we meet this challenge of inadequate labor? And I think the answer will lie in terms of how quickly we adopt new technologies, which will eliminate the need for extensive use of labor. So this is one aspect. The other aspect is that there have for ages we have had conventional techniques of agriculture, and which most farmers practice, and therefore the yields of conventional farming have plateaued. So we don't see any exponential growth with the same farming practices. And so now the question comes is, what do we do about these two things? One is the labor crunch, which we all expect to face. And second, how do we improve yield in our farms, right? So these are the two pressure points that the agribusiness sector will face. So we have had mechanization, we have had hybridization programs, going on for a significant length of time. And now that we have reached a certain stage where yield levels have plateaued, so what do we do next? How do we reach how do we bring the next level of transformation that will break out of the current levels of yield and help us to reach the next level? So the question is, what else can be mechanized? Are there new operations that we can mechanize? Are there new technologies that can be brought in, new kinds of mechanization that will reduce our dependence on labor? Many companies are deeply focused on their hybridization programs. How do we develop new hybrids which are stronger, which are drought resistant, which are pest resistant, hybrids which give you breakthrough yields? What are the new agronomic practices that we can develop which will challenge the status quo and help us to break out of the current yield levels? And I think in today's seed business, so coming back to the initial topic of privatization and globalization, when we talk about seed companies, we are talking primarily of companies which are in the agri-input business, right? So we have had companies, fertilizer companies, agri-input companies, agri-nutrient companies. Then we have had pesticide companies, producing plant protectants. So these companies have been around for quite some time. Later entrant into the agribusiness sector would be the seed companies, so which is the primary input for the seed industry. For a long time in India, at least, The government was handling the seed business for several years, and it was only with the advent of the private sector into the seed business that things have really got transformed. And I think the kind of effort into research that private seed companies put in today's world is phenomenal. Most companies, including ours, have extensive efforts going on in the field of plant breeding and genetics to produce better and better hybrids every year. So in the seed business today, if you look at the private sector seed businesses, companies are absolutely focused on their breeding efforts to incorporate better traits into successive generations of crops. We are looking at higher yields, we are looking at disease resistance, we are looking at pest resistance, we are looking at drought tolerance. Then on the other hand, when you look at better agronomic practices, how can we transform the standard agricultural practices so that farmers can get better yields out of their lands. So there are a number of things which are happening on that side as well. For example, can we adopt high density planting for our crops? You see, all crops have a certain space, a certain number of plants per square meter for the appropriate growth of the plant and to produce the best. We are now looking at can we adopt more high density planting techniques, so that the farmer gets more output out of the same land. So these are all research efforts that most of the seed companies today are focused on. So end of the day, the resources are the same. The land, irrigation, weather conditions, they're all the same. Now, how do we make the most of the available resources? And I think this is what companies today will be focused on. And I think the future looks good, because if you look at social media postings by various companies, you can see a tremendous amount of research being done and good hybrid varieties being released into the markets in field crops, in vegetables, in various other crops. So I think the entry of the private sector into the country has actually kind of revolutionized the seed business, and I can only say that we are in for good times ahead.
Okay. So it's nice to hear the optimistic view of the industry, Mr. Marcus. So TeamLease always talks about putting India to work. In this regard, I have one question. How agricultural companies will help to grow employment and business with the help of technology in the current scenario?
Right. So as I said, I think the entry of the private sector into the seed business has brought about a phenomenal change in the complexion of the seed industry in India. There are a few large Indian players in the seed industry, of which we are one. And at the same time, you also have the India operations of many of the global multinationals. So you have mega corporations, seed corporations, multinational seed corporations of the world who have their India operations. So you have all of these big players who are operating out of India right now. And I think that has created a very healthy competition, which actually pushes us to perform at our best. So that's a great thing to happen. So one is, of course, privatization, and second is the entry of global multinationals into the Indian markets. So we have to constantly keep pace, if not stay ahead of the competition. So that's something that pushes us to keep doing better every day. In India, if you see in India, Hyderabad, for example, is developing as the seed capital of the country. And if reports are anything to go by, I understand there should be anywhere in the region of about 400 seed companies operating just out of Hyderabad, right? So that's huge. That's huge. And I was surprised. I didn't know before I joined my current organization. I was not aware of these developments, right? So Today, if you visit Hyderabad and move to certain parts on the outskirts of the city, all you see are seed companies all around you. Okay, so that is how the seed business is kind of developing and flourishing in India. So this should give us an idea about the emerging employment opportunities in the country, right?
Absolutely.
Today, if you ask me as HR head of an agribusiness company, what my major challenge is acquisition and retention of talent. Number one, nothing else comes even close. And you'll be surprised to know that the industry is so competitive that we have extremely high attrition rates. Mobility is very easy in the agribusiness sector. We keep, we attract talent and we lose talent at almost the same rate. So it's a huge challenge. So what happens is, one, take a place like Hyderabad, we have so many companies with their operations, processing operations. Therefore, mobility is very easy. Someone works for this company today, he works for the next another company tomorrow, right? Similarly, when you look at the sales and marketing setup, almost every seed company operates out of the same territories, right? So someone is a territory sales manager for this company today, he becomes a territory sales manager of the same territory for another company tomorrow, right? So mobility is so easy. You don't have to move house, you don't shift your family. You work for company A today, you work for company B tomorrow. Man. It's that easy. So I think it's a growing sector. Lots of new companies coming into this sector. How many will flourish is difficult to say, but then needless to say, agriculture is an industry which is here to stay. I mean, I think it's going to wipe out the industry, right? So there is room for a large number of players, and in the midst of all this competition, we have to hold our own. So we are competing with large Indian companies, we are competing with global multinationals. So we have to be quick to adopt to new technologies and best practices to stay ahead, right? Now, coming to opportunities, on the one hand, we said that labor is going to be there's going to be a labor crunch. So the crunch will be on farm labor, which we have to offset with the adoption of new technologies, with more and more mechanization and better hybrid varieties. At the same time, the demand for knowledge workers is always going to be there, right? So the opportunities are huge. We need plant breeders, we need geneticists, we need biotechnologists, we need sales and marketing professionals, we need entomologists, pathologists, agronomists, seed technologists. So there's a whole range of specialties which are there in agriculture, which this vast range of agribusiness companies are always going to look for, and we need the best. We need good, trained, experienced professionals. So this demand is there, and it's going to increase. And the competition for talent is going to be intense. And as I said, our industry faces extremely high attrition rates. There is high mobility of talent. It's all happening. Now, this is as regards the opportunities that are there. The question is, how are our agriculture colleges churning out talent which is suited for the demands of the industry, right? So that is where I think the challenge before us is that we would like, the engineering colleges have undergone this entire life cycle of starting with core academic performance and then slowly moving on to industry, institution interface, more and more partnerships with industry, and a lot of people doing internships in industry and picking up industry relevant skills. Is the agri-education sector evolving at the same pace is a question. So I would suggest that the curriculum of agriculture and allied courses needs to be looked at by the government, and with your close, you work closely with the government on various subjects. So I think this is something that you could actually have as a point of discussion whenever you meet with people from decision makers from the government. So the way the engineering syllabus has evolved, that is how the agri and allied subjects curriculum should also evolve. And there should be more room for partnerships with industry. Today, if you talk to young agri professionals, a lot of them still think about working in the government. A lot of them still think about getting into the civil services. A lot of them get into banks. How many of them actually have an aspiration to work for this, flourishing corporate sector, agribusiness sector? So that is where opportunities are going to come in the future. And to be successful in these companies, students should also be prepared. At the end of the 4-year curriculum, they should have had exposure to industry. They should have had exposure to various functions of industry, and they should have exposure to the commercial side of things. Right? The academic side is fine, but then when you work in business, the commercial side of things also really matters. And therefore, the opportunities are there, and I think colleges should gear themselves up to produce talent which will be suitable for these industries, which are really offering great opportunities for young people to work in. Now, since we're talking about employment and agricultural colleges, there's another thing which I have been often talking about, and that is how much of gender diversity do we have in agribusiness? That is something of concern, because if you look at companies like ours, or I'm sure many other companies as well, the gender diversity ratios are pretty low, right? So not many women coming into agri-business industry. And but if you look at the colleges where courses like agriculture, horticulture, veterinary sciences, fishery sciences, if you look at all of these colleges, you have a very large number of women students. I understand the average percentage of women students in agriculture and allied colleges is about 45%, which is really encouraging. But then when you come to industry and see the number of women working in professional positions, the numbers are much lower. So I think there's an opportunity there which is being wasted. So I would like to take this opportunity to also encourage women students of agriculture and allied subjects to explore careers in the agribusiness industry. You have lots of opportunities. You have opportunities for research. You have opportunities in sales and marketing. You can work in the fields. You can work in laboratories. So there are endless opportunities, and I think women should explore opportunities to work in this upcoming and growing sector.
Yeah. Very valuable inputs, Mr. Marcos. I have just noted down, Mr. Ambrose. So the thing is, in fact, I would like to highlight here is that we do have our own skills university in association with the government of Gujarat. I think these inputs that you are given, I will definitely pass it on to my colleague. So how we can start a curriculum or course for people who are interested in this agri belt. Definitely, that is a great help for us.
See, there are some positives here. One is you don't have these mushrooming colleges which happened in the engineering sector. So quality really got spoiled. And today you have extremely large percentage of engineers who are actually not employable. I don't see that kind of problem in the agriculture colleges, where I find most students find some worthwhile job to do. But then the question is, can the quality of graduates be further improved so that they can meet the requirements that are available today?
Okay. So I have come to the last question of the day. How do you see the companies providing employment in niche market, and what are the strategic initiatives Rasi Seeds is taking in this space?
In agribusiness, I think most companies are continuing with mainstream products and services. I don't see many companies actually entering into the niche markets. If you look at agribusiness, what are the niche segments? I think one would be organic farming and organic products would be one. Then you could have maybe exotic fruits, exotic vegetables, maybe exotic spices. So these are a few niche products which would be high value, high cost, which would cost a lot to produce and would also be expensive in the market. But I think agribusiness has a bigger responsibility to the country. I think the primary responsibility of agribusiness is to build up food security for our population, right? So that responsibility, I believe, will not get fulfilled through these niche products and niche markets. Yes, niche products will exist for a certain category of customers who are willing to pay for it, right? So organic products have been a fad for some time now, and it's largely unregulated. So when you pick up an organic product in the market, very often you do not know if it's genuinely organic or not. And those organic products which do all of their testing and have it certified through the appropriate government agencies are substantially more expensive than the other products in the market. Therefore, yes, the government, all with the right intentions, has been promoting organic farming in our country also. But then I do not think that it will become the mainstay, because mass production of food grains will not happen through organic farming, nor will it be economically sustainable. If you analyze the Sri Lanka issue also, I think one of the factors which lie at the back of the economic crisis is the government's insistence on organic farming. They kind of banned fertilizers and they banned chemicals and all that, and pushed hard on organic farming. But then it didn't work out. It doesn't work because the kind of scale that is required for a country as large as ours, I do not think the organic method will meet the food requirements of the entire nation. So therefore, that is going to exist. The conventional methods of chemical fertilizers and chemical plant protectants is going to continue. It has to continue, otherwise we will not be able to provide food for the masses. But small entrepreneurs who wish to focus on niche products and who find a suitable market for their products will, of course, continue to function. But I don't see it happening on a large scale. And our company, and I'm sure many other companies will agree with me, are today not focused on niche products. We are focused on our traditional, field crop business and our cotton business. We happen to be the market leaders in cotton, so we will continue to focus on cotton seed as one of the biggest suppliers of cotton seed for the farmers across the country. We are also into field crops. We are now slowly working on paddy, wheat, maize, mustard, and pearl millet. So these are the 5 crops that we focus on currently. I don't see major changes happening in the near future. There is enough, as a responsibility to the farmers of the country, we will continue to focus on our prime business.
So it was very enlightening, Mr. Ambrose. Learning few things, some of the things which I was also not aware, saying that 400 seed companies are there in Hyderabad.
Absolutely, that was a revelation for me also.
Yeah. And 85% of our farmers are cultivating less than 2 hectares of land. So quite a few revelations on this talk show. And my best wishes to you and Rasi Seeds for
so
helping our country and helping our farmers to grow, bring out more output and grow this nation. Thank you so much for coming on the call. Thank you for your valuable time. And we at TeamLease are very happy to have hosted you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.